What's up, everybody? Episode 39 of the Operators Podcast. We got everybody together. So all four of us in a room, we talk about top of funnel. Jason brags about his vacation. It's a great episode. We want to thank Fulfill, SendLane, Northbeam, three softwares I'm a customer of. If you want to sponsor this podcast, I have to actually like you and be a customer. All of them are fantastic. Let's go.
Matt, I want to apologize to you because I give you a hard time about your vacations, your copious, voluminous vacations. But I'll tell you this, I hadn't taken a 2-week vacation since my honeymoon in 2021. And I'm a believer now. And when I say that, it's like I do long weekends, because I have different houses, and I'll take a week with 2 weekends. You've got to take 2 weeks off. Take them off. Unplug from work. You don't have to unplug from life. I like Twitter. I like Instagram. I like to read the news. But take 2 weeks and unplug from work, because guys, I am so fired up to get back to the office on Monday. It is like crazy. Even coming back, I took 2 days and went to that conference at the ICR conference in Orlando. And on the way there and back, I was just so jazzed that I was just lighting everyone up, twice a year from now on. I'm taking 2 weeks and let the team handle it. So Matt, you win.
That's close to you admitting you're Canadian. That's pretty good. No, man, it's time off is the productivity hack that nobody knew they needed. Right? So if you want to get more done, sit on your ass or find something you like to do and just go do that.
Is it productivity, or is it that when you're increasingly in a management and strategic role, when you're leading people, that you can't just equate more hours to more effectiveness? Because to me, I think that's what it is for me. Is it's like I get away, and maybe 5%, 10% of my brain power is still bouncing ideas around, and letting them kind of take shape and helping me figure out what I think about them. And I'm able to relax. I'm probably just able to shed some stress, but I really do think I come back with better quality of thought often. I'll leave with 2 or 3 things that I'm not exactly sure what I think. I take 2 weeks off. It forces me to think about them for an extended period of time. Then I come back to you come in Monday, you're just guns blazing. You're like, we're going to, this is going to be awesome. But I really think I make better strategic decisions and I lead people better when I'm getting regular breaks, because I'm just
that's
like you.
That's what I mean though, Mike. I think that when you start transitioning from we've talked about the whole player, coach, GM transition. When you're an individual contributor in a company, how you define productivity is very different from how the CEO should think about his or her productivity, right? What you just described is what I would say is that's how you should define productivity, right? Your output, work output, is very different, and Jason's and Sean's is very different from the person who's in your Facebook ads account, right? Or the person who's managing POs and shipping manifests. So what Jason's uncovering is I think it's for the kind of work Jason does, it's a massive productivity hack to take that space. Did you ever see with Charlie Munger passing recently, I was looking through quotes and he talked about how Warren Buffett works. And there's some thing where he says, basically Warren Buffett spends copious amounts of time sitting on his ass reading, right? It's it's hard to argue with his track record in business, but he takes the space and that's what he goes and does is he just gives space to think, which is why you're probably feeling so energized.
Matt, guys, do you feel like you get too close to a problem sometimes and that actually kind of getting some space helps you to solve it better?
I definitely think you get too close to problems, right? We've all had people in our lives who are a little bit farther outside of our business say something that is so obvious that we just overlook. Like I was talking to a guy today and he has like a vitamin shot company. And I was like, yeah, I think you're limited by TAM. He's like, what do you mean? Everyone takes vitamins. And I'm like, everyone takes gummy vitamins or pill vitamins. Not a lot of people take liquid shot vitamins. And I think he's going to change his business because of that. And maybe he listens, maybe he doesn't, but he can double or triple or 10x his TAM by just changing the product format. And he's just too close to his business to realize that. So Jason taking a vacation is taking a step back.
Well, I just think perspective is a lot of solving problems. And one of the ways I can be too close to problems is that I just try and solve them right then. Like what's in front of me and I want to be productive and there's this thing that needs an answer. And so I'm going to make an answer. And I've really seen, so I'm fascinated by this idea that early on in a business, what makes you successful is executing and bias to action, right? I see a problem, I do it myself, right? Then as your business grows, that starts to be less of a strength because now other people aren't developing and you really shouldn't be doing that. And then you get to a certain scale, the scale that all of us are at. And I think it actually starts to really work against you. Like there's a lot of times that instead of immediately trying to come up with a solution or trying to do something right now to solve the problem, I should just shut up and think about it for like 2-3 days, a week. And it's difficult for me to do that, partially because I've developed this wiring and I've fine-tuned it over the years of I see something, I do it. So vacations force me to get away. And sometimes that helps. The other thing that I've become convinced of is that the way that our brains work is very similar to our bodies, in the same way that our body really benefits from HIIT training, where we have these intense pushes and then you lay off of the accelerator a little bit, and then you really, really push and then you lay off. That's when our body really benefits from that, when we train it that way. And in the same way, I think that business for me, I'm at my best when I do it that way, when I have these really intense pushes and then I allow myself to kind of abstract and to get some time and to get some space and to recover and to think. And then boom, it's time for another push.
This is the Naval's work like a lion. You ever see that? Like everybody should work like a lion because lions are highly efficient. It's basically they sit on their ass, they laze around, but when it's time to work, nobody works like a lion, right? Like when it's time to hunt, nobody hunts like a lion.
You know what, Matt? It's funny. I love this because Mike, I do this too, and I didn't even think about it. Like I didn't even know this is the way I work. And it reminds me, like when I was early in my legal career days, my best friend in law school, his dad was a lawyer, and his dad would like come in the office for 4 hours a day, and he would absolutely like just go ballistic for 4 hours, right? Like 4 days a week, and it was like, okay, dad's here, boom, 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 like just barking orders and making decisions and getting stuff done. And they did really, really well. And I don't think the dad was like doing nothing when he wasn't there. He was thinking, right? He was reflecting. And then he was coming in and he was like energized and fired up to crank. And I love the lion analogy too. That's really good.
Here's one more reason why I think the time away really matters. Sean's ability to come up with stuff his team should prioritize far outstrips his team's ability to execute. Like, and that's true of all of us. It's true of most CEOs and executives, that if you're just sitting and you've got a lot of time to think about things that you want the company to take on or that people could be focused on, you can make a list a mile long. And I'm increasingly convinced that one of the things that limits me the most as a leader and that I need to work on, this is a theme for this year, is a lack of focus. That I try to do too many things, and that I'm going to try and be much more deliberate about focusing on a few things, not changing them up on the team, and doing them exceptionally well. That doesn't mean I want to scale back my ambitions, but also being realistic about how many things my team can focus on at the same time or simultaneously.
There's some element of value in planning in that, Mike. Like, most entrepreneurs I know, like all you guys are very entrepreneurial. They default to this like bias to action. I am horrible at this. Like I just want to do everything now. And the zoom out and like try to actually build the list and try to work through the exercise of prioritizing and do that with your team. There is value in that. Like there's such thing as over planning too, right? Like there's people who just like to mentally masturbate, just plan. But that function of like, every CEO needs to develop that muscle of like, you just take a step back and be able to work through your team, not do it for them. Because I think we probably are all guilty of that too. Like, Jason, I understand your like that kind of work ethic. I just grew up in a family that likes to work. And that was just how we were raised. Is just if your fingers aren't bleeding, you're not trying hard enough. And then as the business gets bigger and you get teams, you have to learn to work through people, and your definition of productivity changes. But then working through people is also helping them think, asking questions, like letting them do that work, as opposed to like, if we're always showing up, throwing shit over the fence, which I'm super guilty for, or super guilty of, it's just not very productive. Like the company actually will become less productive by doing that.
Yeah, Matt, I have a real world example. Right now in 2024, we just on Tuesday did our exec meeting. And in that exec meeting, I have a COO, I have a chief product officer, I have a chief design officer, I have the CEO of everydaycarry.com, I have my CMO Connor, and I have my legal team. So there's, 6 other executives in there. And I spent 2 months writing down actual goals with tangible outcomes for every one of them. Right.
No.
And yeah. So like, with my CMO Connor, I'm like, hey, here's the 7 things you have to do this year. Right. Now I can't do any of those as much as I would love to. I can't help him. You know what I mean? Like he has an MER target or he has a sales goal or whatever else. I can't do anything to actually improve his life or improve the business. I can just tell him what I want done. And then actually he has to go tell his VP level and his director level and his management level. And then he has to make goals for them so they actually start working on this. And it's like really starting to think about like hierarchies in businesses and like, pyramids. It's like, look, I gave 30 goals out. I'm hoping we do all of them, but those 30 goals will lead to like probably 1,000 individual tasks across the entire company carried out by our 70 plus US staff. Right.
Can I challenge you on something?
Go ahead.
Why wouldn't you just set the 2 or 3 top ones and let them set their 30 goals? Why not just say like this much revenue, this much profit, let Connor figure out what his MER target should be.
Yeah, I think that is probably a more mature manager. Like I have. So here's how we roll out these goals and targets. I am like, here's 7 things that are very important to me. Right? Like we have a big influence relationship. We're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. This is really important to me. Like my 7 things. I'm like, we have to do all of these. And if we do them, everyone can qualify for their bonus. Okay. And then individual executives, if you want to qualify your bonus, we have to do the 7 things I said. And you also have to do these 6 or 7 things in your individual department. Now they're like pretty large targets. I'll have to think of like a good example. Like I have a COO, he has to save 2% of revenue in costs throughout the business. Right. So he has to talk to his team, ops, payment processing, cybersecurity, whatever, to figure out where that cost savings is. But I'm like, you have to help us do this influencer thing and you got to save 2%, go figure out those things. And maybe if the business gets bigger and we have more leaders and I just cannot come up with individual targets for everybody. I used to do it for every VP, which is, 15 people in my company. Now I just do it to the executives. So I am maturing, Matt.
I love it. No, that's great.
I'm right in the middle of this, Matt, with our team. We're doing Jason's favorite OKRs. And anyway, but as we're doing it, I'm really thinking about, okay, what should be on the corporate OKRs that I set, like kind of Mike's OKRs, and then all the departments set OKRs. And I really think it's kind of somewhere in between what the two of you are saying. Sean, you're saying here's a lot of stuff, and Matt, you're saying why don't you just keep it to a few goals? I think that the line of demarcation for me is I'm giving the things that are strategically important for the future of the business, and that I'm trying to keep those as structural and high level as I can, while people understand the way that they need to work for us to be set up to strategically succeed, and then they figure out the tactics. I definitely shouldn't get into tactics, and a lot of times even there's room for them to figure out some of the strategy at a departmental level. But like you said, Sean, as a leader, you have to have a plan and a picture of what needs to happen high level for the business to be set up for success. So as an example, one of our OKRs this year under product is I want us to do the product development to be ready to do 4 what we call major product launches, which means that they could have a revenue of over X dollars by their second year. And of those 4, I want at least half of them to be in core hydration. But okay, now I give that to my growth teams, my product teams, and I'm like, you've got freedom, you've got some room to work with, some rope to swing with here. And like you're saying, Matt, if I'm not giving them rope to swing with, then they're not developing, and I'm going to be tethered to the company, and I'm not multiplying the number of leaders. But also, I'm putting some boundaries around it. I'm saying, listen, if half of them aren't core hydration, you're doing it wrong. And if we're not doing at least 4, we're not putting enough in the pipeline. So anyway, I'm really kind of fascinated with that idea of that the leader's job is to give as much room for development and growth as you can while still putting appropriate boundaries so that people will do the things and come to the decisions that they need to for the organization to be successful.
We want to thank Fulfill for being our premier sponsor. They are my ERP. I'm on their accounting module, and you'll see a tweet on screen right now from Meetab. He didn't give me permission to say this, but he's the hardest person on earth to please. If you know Meetab personally, he will text you the most minute questions. Like nobody knows what the fucking things he's asking about ecom, and he likes Fulfill. So they've been able to create a product that has the pickiest person on earth happy. I think you'll like Fulfill as well.
My simple model for this, guys, this is like, because I'm really bad at this. My default, Sean, is to do what you do, which is like, these are the things, right? Can't you see this? This is obvious. My simple mental model now is like, I'm in charge of where and why. They're in charge of what and how. Mike, like what you're talking about is, and what I'm talking about is like, our job is to tell the team, this is where we're going. Here's why, right? Most teams, just giving them the where, it's like this much revenue, this much profit, this many product launches, blah, blah, blah. Without context, high performers actually can't be high performers. They need to understand a little bit of context, which is why the why matters. So where, why is us. What and how is where, if you have high performers, what they don't want you doing and what makes people feel like less empowered and less motivated is when we show up and we say, here's how I want you to do it. Here's what specifically you're going to do to get us to where I'm telling you we should go. Right? When you hire a great CMO, like Sean and Jason, you guys have great CMOs. We can't do their job for them. And if we can, we don't have a great CMO. Like, that's just true, right? Like, our job is to be the dumbest person in the room. And the only thing we should be like actually the brightest in and like the thing that we can do that they can't is the where are we going and why are we going there? And if you pay attention, like one of the things I pay attention to in our chat, most of what's being talked about is like where and why stuff. It's like very strategic, right? Every now and again we get pedantic and we start bitching and moaning about SaaS or something, like very tactical in the chat. But that's how I delineate it. It helps me because it's like, it's simple and I'm simple-minded. So I always ask myself, is this a where and why thing? And if it's not, why am I doing it?
Yeah, I think that is great feedback. And maybe I'm more where and why than I know. Right?
You probably
I'm a COO.
are.
I'm like, save 2%. Don't care the what or how. Like, I just find the money because it's very important to save money.
Yes. I did the same thing this week. I'm like, look, we have a $3 million problem in the business. I don't give a shit how you solve it. Just tell me you're solving it.
Right.
Right. That's a where thing.
So what's funny though is we got this guidance at the ICR conference that we're not spending enough money, actually. And this is relevant to Sean and I mean everybody, because we all like care about Yeti, right? We all track Yeti. So this was an interesting anecdote. Yeti went public with really strong margins because they didn't have certain areas of infrastructure built out. And what happens is if you go public with like a 27% EBITDA margin, you don't get credit for 27%. They're just going to be like, no, guys, your business at steady state, it's good. Wall Street says you're going to be at 22% EBITDA margin. So like, don't worry about that extra 5%. So now when you're a private company and you want to put cash in your pocket, like Ridge or Simple Modern or Hexclad, it's different. So we got to kind of thread that needle. But it's interesting, and that's why I've been saying for a long time, like we should spend into a certain EBITDA margin. We should just spend into it, right? Like and just not care. And it sort of segues into the topic, Matt, the top of funnel topic, right? Because I just think we're lucky in that our business was designed to be profitable from the beginning because no one would give Danny and Cole money. Right?
Well, we can't finish a house. Let's just be honest. If you can't finish a house, I get the investor sentiment.
So like that is, that's one of those things there, it's pretty interesting to me. And so when we think about the investments that we make in things like marketing, and when we talk about the top of funnel, this is a piece of it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Jason, you have to spend more money. You have an extra 10, 15, $20 million a year in marketing spend. What are you doing with it? Where would you put that $20 million?
Oh, I'm definitely going build brand awareness if I just have to spend it. Absolutely.
How? How would you do that?
It's all about reaching people. It's really what Sean always says, like spend your money. If you're small, you spend your money on Meta as the best channel for the most part, right? If in D2C, that is. But you're not going to reach everyone there. So you got to figure out how you're going to reach everyone. And when you reach a certain size and scale, my hypothesis is that TV, and you can see the way it's going, like Fox has Tubi, right? Tubi is, if you look at the analyst reports and the press releases and the earnings reports, Tubi is growing really fast. Tubi is the non-subscription streaming service of Fox. People don't want to keep paying for subscriptions, right? So I think what you're going to see there, you're going to see this move back to TV spots. And so for us, I feel like there's Meta crushes for us, but there's only so far we can go with it. And so for us, the next thing is TV. I mean, we can talk about all the other top of funnel stuff, but I'm just a big believer in when you reach a certain size and scale too, TV gives you credibility also. It's like, okay, these guys, wow, I saw a Hexclad TV commercial. These guys are a real business. They're a real company with real products. I think there's it's like doing an IPO, right? If you're a consumer brand and you do an IPO, that will drive business. It should, right? Because it's like, wow, everyone's talking about it. Wall Street's talking about it. These people who are investors and analysts and everyone involved in the financial ecosystem, they're also customers. So I think it's different as you go in terms of size of business. But for us, I think I'm not giving away the keys to the kingdom here. It's just based on our size and our brand and where we're going. I think, more TV.
It's the fill the bucket thing. Like Facebook, Sean's not wrong when it comes to like, if you're smaller, every dollar you spend, it's probably better off being spent on Facebook. What you're talking about, Jason, is that at your size, and at some point, and it's both brand size and it's also category maturity. Like, I think those are the two variables. And then trust is this extra thing. But like at your size, you need a very large source of water to fill a bucket. And Facebook is just an incredibly potent source of water. It's very accurate, right? Like you can do very specific things with it. It's good at targeting people who are in market, but it has a very, very, there is an absolute upper bound to how much money you can put into that channel.
Well, yeah, Matt, I think Facebook's Gatorade, right? Like it is powerful. it is. It'll help you perform, but it is a sugar rush, right? If you only drink Gatorade, you'll get sick. So you do have to balance in some other stuff, like the bigger you get.
Facebook is Gatorade.
I like it. If
Yeah,
you drink too
yeah.
much, you'll get sick.
It's the real e-com action we're going to talk about is top of funnel and different sources. And Jason's a very mature business at this point, fast growing. And the question is, how do you keep that growth going? How do you get new people into the brand? And if Wall Street's telling him, hey, you should be spending more money, and he's like, okay, I'll spend an extra $20 million this year, where do you put that to generate awareness? Jason just said TV is the best place. And we should talk about different sources of top of funnel, right?
Yeah.
TV is great. It reaches a new audience. It does feel more real. And if you're sponsoring a Super Bowl or an NFL game or whatever, like a lot of eyeballs, that a lot more attention's paid on it than a Facebook ad. The other interesting one is out of home. The other interesting one is owned retail. So those are three, big boy plays for top of funnel awareness. Do you guys have any other takes on the other two besides TV, out of home, and owned retail?
I was going to put my hand up and just say not podcast. Ironically, on a podcast.
Why do you say that?
Because the TAM for podcast is so tiny. Like, even if you, like, when you look at all the podcasts out there and you look at their viewership or their listenership, the real actual total number of people who listen to podcasts is actually quite small, right? It's the super consumer theory. So like one person for every podcast listener, I think on average listens to like a multitude of shows. Right. So when you add up like, oh, Joe Rogan gets 100 million downloads a month. I'm like, how many people is that though? Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's the biggest one. So I think there's like there's a hard limit on how much reach podcasts can actually have. I think podcasts though, for the type of medium they are, they're high trust.
Well, and I think that's what I would say is it's not for most products. I mean, obviously we have sponsors for this show and they've had a great experience. And the main reason they've had a great experience is high trust, but also like they're not trying to get the next 1 million customers. They're trying to find the next 100 or the next 1,000 customers. And so for us, we're thinking about our custom business, which has been growing really, really rapidly. And we're thinking, hey, podcasts could make sense for that because we're really looking to find business owners that might want to spend money on swag for their companies or whatever. And these are much higher ticket purchases. And, it's interesting. I met David Senra and spent some time talking to him. And that was the thing about the Founders podcast is that he found, even when his listenership was pretty small in terms of the absolute number, he started to find out who some of these people were. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I've got Fortune 500 CEOs and I've got like these incredibly influential people. So it probably just depends on the product, but it's definitely not a solution if what you're trying to do is get a massive number of new customers. It's more if you're targeting a particular type.
So Sean, you mentioned out of home. I had a little internet blip there, so I missed it. But I think out of home is something that I'm personally very interested in for top of funnel going forward at our size. And you hit the nail on the head, the way you described it.
Jason, why aren't you on like in LA? Like you must have. I mean, have you guys done like analysis of the best geographies for you? Like, where do you have the greatest household penetration by zip code? And like, I would be on every billboard on what is that highway that goes right through LA near the ocean, 405?
The 10, the 405.
The 10, whatever the hell that is.
Sunset
Yeah, it's
Strip.
got like, there's like a bunch of these big ass billboards and they're always commanded by like movies and shit. It's like, I just think of the volume of people on that highway and they're not moving very fast.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. It's not like they're ripping by.
Well, yeah. You know why we haven't done it? We don't have to.
Right.
Yeah. No. So I want to circle back to the point Mike said, because I think it is very important for this audience. this goes back to everything we talk about, is that top of funnel is different depending on your business. If you're a SaaS operator listening to this, don't do TV ads. Like ShipStation's doing them. Like, I think that's probably a
Which
bad
would be
idea.
a mistake.
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Yeah. What Mike's talking about is, he's like, look, I have a B2B custom business, right? Like, that is a big part of, or a fast growing part of Mike's offering. And he's like, how do I reach people who want to purchase B2B stuff? It's like, oh, podcast, LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn ads could be a great top of funnel thing for him, or sponsoring trade shows. That is top of funnel awareness, but for a smaller TAM size business, right? When you're Jason acquired 1 million plus customers last year. He's going to do it again next year. How do you find that next million? That is consumer size top of funnel. That's when TV makes sense, or out of home, or whatever else. So if you know who your key buyer is, you could better identify the top of funnel source for you. And I really think if you're a consumer, TV's a great one. I think out of home could be beneficial, and then owned retail. I think going into owned retail makes sense when you can't really scale Facebook ads anymore, right? A lot of transactions still happen in person, and really what stores are billboards for your .com anyway.
Why
right?
just owned retail?
I want to talk about owned retail, but before we transition off the podcast, like smaller, TAM idea that Sean just said, one other one that's actually really obvious to me now is that founders and key leaders' personal social media can actually be an awesome top of funnel. Like, I don't think the social media work I do or the podcasting I do really impacts the business, like the large, we'll call it B2C business. But our B2B business, we get a ton of people that either follow me on social media or, watch the pod or anything else that approaches through that. So it's a thought. Jimmy does a great job of this with SendLane. Like Jimmy, I think he leverages social media to really help grow what they're doing. So anyway, it's just another example of, it depends on what you're trying to do.
Dude, that is a great point. People buy from people. The smaller your just like pool of decision makers, the more one-on-one it should be. Like, why does Oracle have a B2B sales team? Because they know that there's 1,000 people in America they have to get in front of, and the best way to do that is just hound the fuck out of them. So social media, that's a great one. Matt, you had a good point.
Yeah, I wanted to, this owned retail versus non-owned retail as a top of funnel mechanism. Like, Jason, I would argue your greatest top of funnel channel is Costco. Like, it's an immense amount of footsteps, and it's high trust footsteps. And yeah, that's a profitable channel for you, but I'd have a hard time arguing that a lot of people haven't discovered HexClad in a Costco.
Oh, for sure. We know they have.
Right. Even though
I'm so glad you're saying this. This is I was literally talking about this exact topic with my team yesterday, Matt. Like, Target has a dual purpose. Physical retail has a non-owned physical retail is like billboarding. It's like out of home, right? It's like how many people walk through the Target drinkware aisle in a given day? Okay, now there's 2,000 stores, and multiply it times 2,000 times 365. So you just start doing some math, and you're like, okay, I don't know, 300 people walk through a Target drinkware aisle in a day. And so in a year, multiply that times 365, that's 10,000. Multiply that times 2,000 stores, and boom, it's 2 million really high trust impressions that are happening just by being on the shelf, right? You get an end cap, that number shoots up because it's not 300 people, but it's 3,000 people that walk by it. And this is one of my arguments why omnichannel, I just don't see any way that omnichannel is not the best approach for most brands, because there's so much built-in marketing that you basically get for free in the deal. So much brand exposure.
So Mike, I agree with everything everyone's saying. I think there's, and like Matt says, the foot traffic in Costco is massive. But different products sort of have a different purchasing pattern. People don't want to carry out 20 and 40 pound boxes from places. In Costco, they have the massive cart, right? Like going to Target, going to places like that. So again, like every business is different, but I 100% agree. We've had conversations with retailers have been knocking on our doors for a long time. And we tell them no all the time. because it's like, but we're looking at it in a one-dimensional way. We're looking at it in what kind of volume is that going to drive? And it's like, I mean, I don't wake up in the morning for that number. Like, no, I'm going to get out of bed for that number. But there is a branding component to it, though, that I do think is very, very powerful. And again, it goes back to when I always say, like, tell me why I need to do this now. There may be a time for us to be there, but it's interesting.
I just want to point out that I would consider Costco Roadshow to be a lot closer to owned retail than traditional retail, because Jason's employees doing demos in stores or across the country, that feels a lot more like having a store or having a pop-up experience, right? And now Mike is totally right. Mike has the most penetration out of anyone we know in the retail world. So he is getting a ton of top of funnel from that. But Mike, think about how much better it would be if you had employees in every target just showing how your bottle doesn't leak.
Sure. Yeah. And we're looking at this. We're looking at owned retail. I think for me, the thing with owned retail, if it's a top of funnel lever, it just takes a lot of CapEx and a lot of attention. And here's my question to the group. What's the runaway success story of a digital first brand that pivoted into owned retail where they've just crushed it with that strategy? Who's the poster child of somebody who really did it well?
D2C, dude, I hate the moniker, and I don't know, but I can definitely get you a big list of like consumer brands who were
Well, there's a bunch of people that have
store.
done it, and that's kind of what I'm challenging here is I'm just saying, like, is it because it's a great idea, or is it because when management teams run out of ideas, they tend to say we should build stores? And I'm not talking about the flagship store, like the Yeti store in Austin.
Question.
To me, that just makes sense, right? Like you should have a couple of flagship stores that tell your story, especially in your local community. Those are, I think when you get to a certain size, I think that makes a ton of sense.
That's a great question.
I'm just asking, what are the examples we're pointing to where somebody who did not have a physical retail primary core competency, they had a different one, and then they expanded into physical retail from that core competency and it went great?
You know what, man? No, I don't. I mean, Sean, you might know of one. Here, I'll give you why I can't think of one right now, though. D2C as a core competency is just not that old.
Yeah. I mean, what I would point to is Aritzia. So Aritzia was actually store first in the 80s, but that is the most productive per square foot of anybody besides Apple, right?
Go Canada.
So, yeah.
All the best ones. Lulu, Aritzia.
One win. Congrats.
Just saying.
I'll send over, and actually, on this right here, there's probably a summary I did of Aritzia, but like their store sales business is so fucking impressive. But Mike, you're right. It's really hard to do. CapEx is crazy. I think we will end up buying real estate to do our own stores, trying to be like way more like McDonald's. I think it is. I was looking at places on Abbott Kinney in Los Angeles, and like they want $65,000 a month in rent, and it's like, yeah, but you're never going to make any money doing that, right?
Yeah.
But if you can buy a building and pay $65,000, on your mortgage, it's like, oh, okay, with depreciation, if you're privately held, if you're going to own your business for 10 years anyway, I think we can make it work. But
I do. I mean, look, I think, Mike, when you're speaking, I'm like listening to you guys, the thing that's coming up for me is when you think about top of funnel, you should almost have like a stack ranking system based on some criteria. Like the thing with retail is it's what I like about it, end caps, Costco Roadshow, even like large amounts of, linear feet, Mike, which is what you have in Target. Like there's just big sections of a store. It's all very trackable top of funnel. And I think it's easy for marketers to not be able to stack rank based on like what can you actually see. Like the reason that I don't like billboards is like I have no idea if that's working, right? TV is maybe better than billboards because when the spot hits, you can see the traffic spike, and then Costco Roadshow is even higher quality because like it actually just produces revenue on the spot. So it pays for itself. You can make it pay for itself, and you can make the assumption that you're reaching a lot of people. Like that's kind of how I would put top of funnel sources.
Yeah. And I want to preface this that we started talking about this, that if a banker told Jason he had to spend $20 million, right? I don't want people listening to this being like, I got to go do TV and billboards, right? No, that's a super bad idea until you get to a point where you have excess money and you're growing so fast and you have to start thinking about like the future of this. The only other top of funnel source I think we should talk about is own content, right? You know,
Hot Ones.
Jason, Hot Ones is a great one. I think Jason was talking and about to launch like a recipe series or a YouTube channel about that, like finding a new entry point for people to discover your brand through the same digital mediums, but like, old school SEO basically, but with content first approach. Any thoughts on that, guys? I think that's a lot more achievable for a lot of brands listening to this.
I think for sure for like our audience, particularly, I would say the younger the founder, that's actually, it's like a native digital thing, Sean, is to go and creating content. The barriers are so low now that like owned content or owned series. Although I don't know, man, to me, it sounds really hard.
Yeah. In our space, Away made like a series of travel books, right? Like they're like, you're going to buy your suitcase. Like you should know about the best places in Rome or whatever. I'm going to SendLane, guys. Q1, January, sign me up. I'm going to SendLane. Jimmy has consistently proven that he is there to support us, even when we were not a customer. He helped us solve email issues. I'll be really honest with you. The cost savings is probably the biggest driver for me. I think I'm going to save like over $100,000 a year switching. And there is nothing I would not do to save $100,000 on SaaS. Like whatever the darkest thing you're thinking, yeah, that's me trying to save money on SaaS. So that's a big driver. And look, I believe in the product. I've seen it. I've seen the demos. People are like, isn't migration going to be a pain in the ass? Yes. That is why I did not migrate in Q4. It's never going to be painless to do one of these things, right? Like I've been on Klaviyo for 10 years. It's gonna take some time and effort to put it in, but Jimmy is the type of guy who's committed to make it as seamless as possible. So I'm very, very excited to switch to SendLane. They're a startup, man. I think their culture matches mine. I'm excited to be there. So Photoshop a SendLane logo on my jersey because that's where I'm going, guys.
Love it.
But Sean, one thing I do think stacks on top of what you're saying. We know a couple of people that are outstanding in this kind of content area, I would say. Kevin with the plant stuff, Isaac, with Mini Katana, and he's got a new thing coming that's super interesting that he's been sharing with us internally. But the observation I have about those people is that they're native to content creation. Like, I think if I went to our team and I'm like, hey, let's build a content creation arm, I'm not sure that we could really do it or do it very well. And that's why, I think in some ways you've got an announcement coming a few weeks from now where you're working with somebody, an influencer. And so it's kind of a hybrid between influencer and content creation, or I don't know if you view it that way. But I'm increasingly thinking content creation is super smart, but that it's, again, to go back to core competencies, it's better to go and find somebody who has this core competency and to somehow bring them in and make them a part of your company. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to develop that core competency within your company.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I mean, I do think we have to start getting better at it. One of Connor's key objectives this year is to get better at social, like for our organization to get better at social, because what I said is 10% of our customers should come from or discover us organically via social. That is top of funnel through just a different lens, right?
Right.
I don't think we'll ever make long form YouTube videos because that barrier is really high, but like we should just get really good at short form content. And that's something we're going to pivot into just because I think the internet's going to continue to win. There was someone posted on Twitter a screenshot of newspaper ad revenue over time.
I
And
saw that.
in 2000, it was $40 billion. And that's like basically Facebook's ad revenue in the past couple of years. And it's like, yeah, those ad dollars have just shifted. And I just, firmly believe that's going to continue to happen. As much as like we talk about top of funnel, it's like, yeah, we just define things, find different avenues to reach people wherever they are. And I still think digital is going to win. I think TV has a place, owned retail, all those people have a place, but we're going to try to get better at social media content.
That makes sense to me, Sean, because like short form content for social media is not very far from producing short form content for ads. Like their like proximity is close.
I think Sean, I think you're absolutely right about owned content. And at the beginning of 2023, we had an objective to really improve our organic social in general. And we made great strides there, just sort of like the look and feel and the content that we're posting on our organic. And it's just a very fertile area because of the cooking space. It's just a great space to do that in. And I will say that we're like tripling down on that in 2024.
What's the division?
Not just thinking about having our organic social feed looking good, right? Like, which was
what's the division between money you spend on the kind of creation of that versus pushing that out, Jason? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, in terms of pushing it out, we're already on a lot of TV shows. We have a pretty good strategic relationship with the big network through Gordon. We don't have a very sharp pencil on budgets around those things, Mike, because we probably can't spend enough on it, right? So in our world, at least, but we just we have our own studio now. Like we could be shooting in it every day.
Go ahead, Matt.
Sean, I'm just curious because I think Jason just gave me his answer. What is there a guide that you could give a listener or a viewer of this right now from this percentage of your revenue should be invested in content production?
Oh man, that is a great question. It depends on how you think about what counts as content production, right? Like
ads, organic, like everything.
I think there's some simple math that like for a video that costs $100,000, like an ad that costs $100,000 to make, you have to be able to spend 10 times as much at the same efficiency as a video that costs, like $5,000 to make. I know the math would be $10,000, but no, like the smaller the budget for the video production, like the more rapid, the more chances it's going to work or whatever. So like these big videos, like these flagship videos, they just have to get so much more juice out of them, and it's so hard to do that.
That's because you're thinking about it in for different stages of the funnel. So if you like for top of funnel TV, YouTube, streaming, you probably need a higher production value, higher storytelling, or at least some of it, as opposed to like middle and lower funnel where it's more UGC, influencer. So I don't know. That's the way we think about it.
Right. And I think that's a very traditional way to think about it. There's nothing wrong with that. But what you're saying is content production is a skill and not luck. And I totally believe there's lots of skill involved, but if you remove the quality of production, so if you remove cameras, if you remove sets or whatever, do you have better chances of $100,000 video working or $100,000 videos? Now, obviously, the $100,000 video is going to have better production. So what I'm saying is it's basically like a false equivalency. But if content production is luck and just shots on goal, right, and time put into it, you have a better chance of success with a ton of very cheap videos than one big video. Now, if you really believe in the big video and that's the message you want to tell, then that's the message you want to tell, right? Like it's your fucking money, it's your brand. You get to tell whatever story you want. But
I guess it just depends on the channel, though. I think it depends. And we can talk about on the next pod, like how much creative is enough, right? How much content is enough for
I
paid?
think I saw you ask that question
for paid ads.
And I'm like, man, I don't
this
know
is
the answer
something
to
that
that.
like I'm really struggling with right now, because like we want to spend money, but we don't want to be stupid about it. Like, so how many of these like on Facebook, like what Sean's saying, like on Meta, do we do 100 ads or one ad? Because it's a tough one, guys. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough
It's
one.
difficult at scale. I mean, at some point you saturate a channel, right? And it's Sean, I know we've talked about this in the past, but like the luxury brands, they encounter this problem all the time where like they just hit a point of oversaturation. So like, I think Jason, the answer, like how much content is enough? That's a channel. There's an upper bound to the channel. Even though these like TikTok and whatever, they're big, like there's a point where you're just annoying people at a certain scale.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Sean's big on Meta. We're big on Meta. Matt, I'm assuming you're more YouTube than Meta. You're more YouTube than Meta, but like how many, I'd love to know like how many different pieces of content. Like, I guess I go look at Sean's ad library, but
I mean, it's a lot. Like the answer right now for most people listening to this, you're likely not making enough. That's the answer for like 98% of brands.
That's the conventional wisdom answer.
But the reason isn't. It's important to note the reason that we all probably could use more creative is not because we need more creative to spin through. It's that the more shots on goal, the more chances you have of hitting the top 1%. And it's total power law. The top 1, 2, 3% of creative is going to spend a huge amount of your budget.
Shout out to some Northbeam MMM and some other areas which we've been doing the work, but we saw this a year ago, how impactful TV has been for us. And I've been saying this too. It's like a lot of people are on Facebook, but not everyone is on it. Not everyone is on Instagram. Like,
I don't even think it's
controller and my staff accountant, I'm talking to them the other day, and they're like, because I wanted them to log into Meta to be able to check how much we owe Meta because we went on invoicing for this period. They're like, we need to create Meta accounts to log in. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you don't have a Facebook account? Like, no. I'm like, what? You don't have a Facebook account? You're in your early 30s, late 30s, late 20s. Wow. No account. So, and also I think TV just gives your brand a level of credibility and trust.
It's trust
just by being there.
Check out Solo. Okay. Did you see the Solo earnings report? Okay. So basically they said the Snoop ad that they did, which everybody loved, everyone was like,
sure.
Like, right. It was the best thing ever. It was okay. It was good. Didn't do what they thought it was going to do, right, Sean?
But aren't you making my point? Aren't you making my point, Jason? Like they spent a lot of money and they got a lot of views, but it didn't convert into helping the brand.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Sean's saying.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
A lot of this is like, it's just, there are no universal concepts here. There's no universal precepts. That's what we keep telling people, that it doesn't. Not everything applies to you.
A good ad doesn't fix a bad brand. And Solo Stove they're in a Solo Stove recession. They sold too many during the pandemic. Their whole market is shrinking. Outdoor suffering right now. Mm-hmm. They had a great fucking ad with a Snoop ad. It's not going to save a business that's going to be down 30% year over year. What Jason is saying is, actually, I'm not going to put words in Jason's mouth. What I hear from what Jason's saying is, we have a story we want to tell. We're going to tell that story, right? So you don't need more creative. You have the story you want to tell, and you'll go out there and you'll make the story again. That's what Geico does, right? That's what whatever large brand is. They have a concept or story that they want to tell, and they're going to spend against that. And hopefully it works. Hopefully, they're not trying to see one day click ROAS on their Facebook ads, right? But for almost everybody else listening, don't listen to Jason. You need more ads.
Can I provide a different perspective here too? Like, ahead, Jason, Matt. This is probably mostly for you and Sean. I mean, Mike, you and I don't spend nearly the dollars they do, right? So, Jason, the other way to look at spending another $20 million is to actually focus it on like one or two very key moments in the year. So make like at your scale, make really like fire a fucking cannon. Don't go try to find 50,000 machine guns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like pick a moment and like make it a national day, make it a something. Right.
Like giving away a vehicle.
Like what Sean does. Like he makes a moment.
Or like a market. Like we're gonna freaking own. We're gonna go and we're gonna just own LA and NYC. We're just gonna
why
own those
does
markets.
every home in Los Angeles not have a hexclad pan? Like, can you get to 20-30% household penetration in California? And then think about the brain damage and how little the brain damage would be as a brand. Just be like, look, we own California. We're worth so much more money by just we're like unbreakable in these markets because we own every home. I just think like it's top of funnel is maybe not the right frame.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to the Operators Podcast, everybody.